Hi everyone, this is Whisper of the Oracle. I'm your host, Juha. Let's talk about draft format shapes. As you might know from some of my previous content, I'm pretty obsessed with draft format shapes. And your first question might be, what on earth is a draft format shape? Basically, it is the way in which the cards in the format, especially the heroes, the classes, the talents, and the hybrid cards involved, as well as the mechanics, interact in a way which give you a certain feeling, certain kind of a draft experience, especially when you're thinking about staying open versus picking a lane. This could, for example, mean that if we take the simplest example, the Welcome to Wraith draft format shape, which is very, very straightforward. You have 4 classes, and then you have a bunch of generics. And even though some of the generics go better with one class than another, if you take one step above that, it's basically a very, very simple shape where you can go into one of the 4 classes, or you can stay open with generics. And that's pretty much it. And then you have much more complicated draft format shapes where talents and hybrid cards make you kind of half open, half closed at any given point in the draft. A quick disclaimer to this video, everything I say here about Rosetta is true as of my expectation today on the 11th of August, and it's based on this sheet by, I believe it's Syntheros, where we have all the known cards so far, and you can see that on the left-hand side, each of the 4 heroes has just 3 draftable cards that are specific to that hero, and most of the set is Earth cards, Lightning cards, Runeblade cards, and Wizard cards with a sprinkling of generic cards at the end. And that's what the logic of 4 heroes, 2 elements, and only 12 cards that are specific to each hero, whereas everything else should probably go to 2 out of the 4 heroes. So that's what I'll be talking a lot about in this video. Today we're going to look at draft format shapes in a pretty high level way, meaning we're looking at heroes, classes, talents, and hybrids, and we're ignoring the mechanics. Right, we're ignoring where a generic is maybe good for a certain set of classes, but bad for another certain set of classes. And if you look at these 4 dimensions and you look at the 10 draftable sets up to Rosetta pretty soon, you'll notice one thing at first. Everything since Monarch has been unique. Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Rising basically had the exact same shape, but everything from Monarch onwards, which introduced talents, has been at least a little bit unique. So let's get started on the path of why is Rosetta more unique than the unique sets before it, if you could put it that way. First of all, it is the first set since Monarch to introduce 4 heroes. We've had 3 and we've had 6. And whenever we've had 6, they've always been in 3 classes. So we've either had, basically, we've always had 3 classes or 1 class with 3 heroes in the case of Evo. So for the first time since Monarch, we're getting 4 heroes again. The most unique thing in terms of this way of looking at things, Rosetta is the first set ever to feature exactly 2 classes. We've had 1, we've had 3, and we've had 4. So this is a pretty cool take on a draft format, on a new kind of draft format shape. So how are these sets constructed from the top down in terms of pure numbers? First of all, Monarch is basically the only exception in the number of draftable cards. And when I talk about draftable cards, I mean the commons, rares, and majestics, and in some cases, super rares in the very early sets. So even though legendaries were draftable early on, I have excluded them from my analysis because they are very, very rare. All the sets, except for Monarch, had basically between 198 and 221 draftable cards, and Monarch had 282. It was a huge set because it was a 4 hero set with talents, with generics, sort of the whole shebang pulled into it. It had more than 300 cards total. So what does this mean? It means that when you look at the numbers top down, the size of a set is pretty standard, and that continues with Rosetta. So let's start breaking this number down into concepts that are meaningful for you when you're opening your pack and trying to figure out if you should try to stay open or if you should try to pick a lane and stay on that lane. So let's take 3 dimensions which a card can fall into. Either it can go to a single hero or a hero pair in the hybrid sets, which had 6 heroes each. Including those, all those 6 heroes in this analysis would add a level of complexity that's probably not useful here. So there's those that go to 1 hero or 1 hero pair. There's those cards that go to multiple, but not all. Here you could use, as an example, an Earth card from Tales of Aria, which goes to 2 heroes, but not 3. Or a hybrid card from Outsiders or Heavy Hitters, which again goes to 2 pairs of heroes, but not 3. And then there are the cards that go to all heroes. These are basically either generics, or they can be talent cards where everybody shares the same talent, which was the case in Part the Mistveil. Then marked for each category the biggest number in blue and the second biggest number in green, if you're thinking about the color coding, and really low numbers are in red. The first thing to note here is that while Welcome to Rathe and Arcane Rising were extremely similar in their shape, Part the Mistveil was actually very, very close. So the closest comparison to Part the Mistveil is actually Welcome to Rathe and Arcane Rising, and not some of the 3 hero sets, as you might otherwise think. Uprising was the one which had the most cards for a single hero. And the reason for this is that many of the talent cards, the ice cards, were only going to Icelander. So they were basically like single hero cards. And this probably explains a little bit of why everybody thought Uprising was so on rails from like pick 3 or 4 onwards, whereas you could stay open to pick 6 or 7 or 8 in some of the other formats. And many people didn't like the draft experience in Uprising. I personally thought it was fine. Then you have Rosetta as the one with the biggest number of cards going to multiple heroes, but not all. And this is speculation, of course, because I don't know the exact spread of these cards. I don't know the mechanics if they somehow prevent the cards from going to one hero or not another. But based on set numbers, it's really looking like there are only 12 cards, or 6% of the set, where the cards go for simply one of the 4 heroes. And it looks like there are probably not that many generics, which would go to all heroes, around 12%. And around 80% of the cards are either Wizard, Runeblade, Earth, or Lightning. And each of those 4 would go to 2 heroes, but not all the 4 heroes. So that makes Rosetta an extremely unique, a very interesting take on a draft shape. Finally, of course, the set with 100% of the cards going to all heroes was Bright Lights, and everybody knows that was unique. That was a very interesting take on a draft format shape. I really liked that they experimented it. It wasn't necessarily for me, but many people liked it. Another way in which Rosetta is pretty unique is that I already talked about how Rosetta has only around 6% of the cards going for a single hero or being played by a single hero. The only comparison there is Bright Lights. Every other set has had at least 50% of the pool playable by only a single hero. So if you're thinking about, opening your first pack of 14 cards, thinking about which of these cards are gonna keep me open and which of them are gonna really push me into a single direction, then this is like almost nothing you've seen before, save for Bright Lights, which of course was a single class set. On the other hand, the number of generics is going to be relatively low, it seems like, and the only time where there have been this few cards playable by all heroes in the set was Tales of Aria, and that's because Tales of Aria basically didn't have generics. It only had 4 generic equipment and then a bunch of elemental cards, which in theory were playable by all heroes. But even those were mostly, pushing you into a certain direction. So also in this sense, it's going to be very, very unique. Instead of opening the pack and looking at your cards and seeing that, hey, half of these are going to take me to a single hero, it's basically going to be a fifth of the cards is going to either keep you fully open or push you into a single direction, but the vast majority is going to keep you open into 2 heroes out of the 4. So as a summary, I believe Rosetta is going to be one of the most unique drafting experiences we've ever seen in Fab, and it's precisely for the reason that when you open your pack, when you look at your 14 cards, almost all of them are going to be playable by 2 heroes, not fewer or not more. And that's going to give a very, very interesting, unique way at looking at how do we stay open. Thanks for watching this video. Here's another video you could be interested in, and please do consider subscribing. It's always super appreciated. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Stay curious, folks.